Hey, everybody. Welcome back to AI Diatribe. There has been a movie that has come out recently called The AI Doc, or How I Became an Apocalyptimist. And both Matt Konwiser, my compatriot, who has just waved to you for those that are watching versus listening, and I have both seen this movie, and it resonated very much with us, with many of the points that we have discussed on this podcast and together in private discussion that wasn't necessarily contained within this podcast. And so we just thought we would do a very fun and short, kind of like a Siskel and Ebert thing. I don't know if I'm Siskel. I don't know if I'm Ebert. I don't know. I just don't know. You can be whichever of those you want to be. But we're going to do a little bit of a movie discussion and a little bit of a movie review. First, let me just say this. Go out and watch the damn documentary. It is available on Amazon Prime right now. I was not able to see it in the theater. I actually had to buy the movie on Amazon Prime, and it was worth every penny because I subsequently then took it and showed it to my extended nuclear family. We had a dinner night last night. We did a movie night with pizza, and my mom and my sister and some of her kids and, all of these people, we got together and we watched it. And it was so interesting that we were literally pausing the movie about every 5 minutes because somebody wanted to discuss something that came up in the movie. So we are going to discuss the movie. We're going to try and not necessarily spoil the premise, but we are going to try and discuss many of the things that are contained therein in a very diplomatic and politically correct fashion. So let me start this out, Matt, because this was a big desire of yours to have this discussion. And so I think it's really interesting because the documentary, it's basically some sort of a journey from fear and anxiety to something kind of like super conditional optimism. Let me ask you, what stuck with you about the journey, and what did you feel was too neat and too packaged?
So your description of it was very good in terms of the journey it took, and it actually followed the Disney premise. So if you watch any Disney movies, they start with a slight upbeat and then immediately take you into this massive downward spiral where everybody is horribly depressed, and then they dig you back out of it, and then you kind of settle into this really nice, happy medium. This did the same thing. And I think what worked was that they did represent equally the two really opposing forces that we have, right? So in real life, we have two very opposing forces in AI. We have Hinton and we have Altman. And Hinton says everything's going to end, the world's going to die, and everybody's going to be in hell. And Altman says everything's fine, nothing's wrong, this is amazing, we should all be happy to be here.
So for a little bit of context for those that are listening that aren't sure who we mean by Hinton and Altman, Hinton, we're talking about Geoffrey Hinton, who is known as the godfather of AI because he was part of the team that built the original neural network that led to large language models. And then when we're talking about Sam Altman, we're talking about the CEO of OpenAI. Okay, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No,
you know
I'm
what
glad
else
you
is kind of
did.
funny? I also want to bring this point up. Maybe the Disney methodology is why they went out and bought Star Wars, because Star Wars follows that path. Anyway, but
It
I
absolutely
digress.
does.
Please
No,
continue.
it's a good point.
So you felt that this was this was kind of an interesting narrative. I mean, did you find the narrative comforting?
Well, there was a story arc to it, and I don't know if it's really giving it away, but the story arc is that the person who made the movie is about to have a child, and they wanted to know if this is a safe world to bring a child into, and that was the overall premise. Now, what I think that worked really well was that they did get a lot of voices on both sides of the argument. They also got Dario Amodei, who runs Anthropic. They got Sam Altman, who runs OpenAI. They invited Zuckerberg and they invited Elon Musk, and Zuckerberg didn't respond, and Musk said he would and then couldn't make it. But they also had one of the inventors of Google's Gemini and DeepMind as well.
Demis Hassabis.
Thank you. I can never get that name right, so I'm glad you did. I was not going to John Travolta that name, so I thank you for...
I just know it's Demis because it's so close to Dennis, but it's with an M, and so it makes it memorable to me. I don't know. Anyway,
that's fair. So the reason why this hit me, and I don't fundamentally agree with a lot of the things that were said in it, by the way, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad documentary. It actually makes you think, which is what a documentary should do, What I thought was very compelling, and what I thought is something that we all need to think about, is that the whole premise was not on innovation and technology. It was on the impact to humans. The whole thing, the negative, the positive, the neutral, it was all about human impact of these systems and what it's going to do to people, to the planet, to children, to adults. And as I was watching this documentary, and the other thing I should mention is, by the way, shout out to NYU, because they did a private screening before it came out in theaters, and I was able to see it, as well as a panel afterwards with Jonathan Haidt, who is a very famous author, Jonathan Wang, who is the producer, and also Jay Van Bavel, who is a psychology professor at NYU. And they were talking about their interpretation and their opinion of this documentary afterwards. And what I thought was really interesting was Sam Altman, believe it or not, tied up everything in a bow very nicely at the end. And he also called out the problems that we're having right now with AI. He said that the kids that are growing up now are never going to grow up in a world without AI.
And they're also going to grow up in a world where they are never smarter than AI. AI will always be smarter.
Yes. And again, like I said, I didn't agree with everything that was said all the time.
Yeah.
But I will say, though, that what Sam Altman said about that really made me think. And the reason why it made me think was because the three panelists afterwards were talking about, all the risks and all the dangers and all the concerns about AI and everything else. And they were looking at it from a very non-native AI point of view.
That's what I liked about this, was because you mentioned it very clearly, which is this movie it had a little bit of the tutorial of how AI works and how it's become what it's become. And for those that don't really know a whole heck of a lot about how AI works or the mathematics behind it, it's a really cool little tutorial. But you're absolutely right. The main emphasis here was the socioeconomic disruption and the socioeconomic impact of artificial intelligence, which is what made it so easy for me to share it with my dear 79-year-old mother, who really got a whole heck of a lot out of it because she knows that AI is happening. She knows that it's an impact. I mean, on the business side, we already know. I mean, more than half of companies out there are already using AI in some fashion. IBM, the place where you work, says that 83% of companies say AI is a top strategic priority. So it's in the business side of things. Those of us that are on the tech industry side or in tech adjacent industries, we know this, but the average Joe, not so much. This documentary allowed my mother to understand why I have repeatedly said, Mom, I feel like the scientists in the movies don't look up, because I'm walking around having a good idea of what the disruption is going to be and how crazy things are going to get because of the proliferation of AI. And no one around me knows what I do. And and some of them that I try and tell don't want to hear it. I just don't want to talk about that. That's too disturbing. That's too depressing. I just think I'm just going to leave it alone and not worry about it until it really intrudes in my life. They don't want to confront what it is that's coming. And so I feel like frickin' Leonardo DiCaprio. Leo, if you see this, great job in that movie. Don't Look Up. You're amazing. But that's how I felt.
And I think that that's right. I do think that what makes this so great is it is very accessible. And I think you hit the nail on the head. And it very much puts people in their feels. I think that people that feel the way Hinton does, right? So the kind of the doom and gloom side, I think they're going to have something they can get their teeth around. I think the folks that are passionately optimistic are going to have something they get their teeth around. And that's ultimately why it is called an apocalyptimist. And that, by the way, that was a quote from the movie. One of the interviewed folks said that, and it became part of the title because it is very fitting. And I think that that's the point. And it goes to the P-Doom score that you and I talked about with Alex Furtado as well. I remember I said I was right at the 50%, right at a dead 5. And I think that's where I still am even after the documentary, because the documentary was spot on. It can go either way. There's no set determination right now. The one person they didn't talk about, did an interview, which I thought was very interesting, though, by the way, was Yan LeCun.
Yeah, that's true. That was a glaring omission.
Now, Yan LeCun, for anybody that doesn't know, and I will follow Jason's footprints on this one. Yan LeCun was one of the lead researchers at Meta. He's one of the top data scientists, head of their AI programs, and a very well-documented centrist on the impact of AI. So he is saying that AI is going to take over. He is saying that AI is going to become this all-encompassing capability, but he's also saying it's not going to happen with anything we're seeing today. And it's not going to happen the way Altman's saying it will, or Hinton is saying it will. It's going to be something different because the things that we know today as AI are not capable of the things that we are most afraid of. And it is possible that by the time those AI capabilities exist, they will surpass the things that we are most afraid of, and so we won't be afraid of them anymore. It's another bet on where the future could go, but it's a bit different from either of the two poles. And I think maybe the reason why Yan wasn't mentioned, and they didn't even invite him, if I remember correctly from the documentary, right? Like his name never even came up.
It never came up, not once.
And to me, that was not only a glaring omission, but I also thought maybe it's because he is too centrist and doesn't have enough of a polarizing opinion to fit with the two halves of the documentary. He's a bit too neutral, which I actually prefer, by the way.
Well, and he had some points, some of the points that Yan probably would have made. Ilya Sutskever, for those that aren't, familiar with him. He worked very closely with Geoffrey Hinton in that development of deep learning models and the neural net architecture. And Ilya is a personal hero of mine. I think he's brilliant. I think many of the things that he espouses and discusses, he comes from things from an angle that I find particularly illuminating. I've watched many of his speeches and fireside chats and stuff like that. And he kind of played that role, I thought. I mean, do you agree? Do you think that maybe he could have kind of done what Yan would have done on the documentary?
I think he could have. And just for background, where is he at right now?
I do not know the name of it
OpenAI?
specifically. No, he left OpenAI and
But he was there. He was one of the originators of the ChatGPT model, GPT-2 or GPT-3.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's the backstory for him, just so everybody knows that piece. So he did work with Sam Altman. He did help build ChatGPT, the thing that became the consumer craze that is now generative AI. So he certainly has a right to participate in this documentary. So yeah, I don't know where he is now, but
you know what, everybody, while you're listening to this, I'm going to look this up, and then as soon as I get done talking right now, I'm going to tell you where he is.
Perfect. He did have a very neutral tone, I think, a little bit more of a calm demeanor, but he also wasn't expressing a strong opinion. He was either agreeing with what he heard or disagreeing with what he heard, but I didn't hear him asserting his own direct point of view as pointedly as some of the other folks did. But it resonated with me because I am a dad and I do have a younger kid who has never grown up without technology, never knew it. I mean, I think the first time he saw a television commercial and asked if we could skip it, and I said no, he looked flummoxed because it was just, what do you mean you can't skip a commercial? Like, you just hit the button. It's like, no, it's live TV. That's not how this works. So you think about that, right? That's the same kind of leap. We grew up knowing television commercials and needing a TV guide. And if you didn't have cable, you were stuck with messing around with two little antenna wires until you could get a picture just barely good enough to be able to watch Doctor Who at 7:30 at night every other Tuesday. The generations are changing. I think what I'm still figuring out from this documentary, what it's made me think about is, are we being heavy-handed with our opinions because we are comparing what AI is doing to the world with what we are most used to? And people that are growing up with AI, maybe they're like, cool, AI 2.0, AI 3.0, it's whatever. We're going to keep doing what we do and we're going to coexist with it. That's what really was striking to me in this documentary. It was, like I said, great points of view, but it made me think about this in a whole different way.
I agree with you. I think that age probably makes the acceleration of this feel a little bit faster because, of the time perspective of those that have been around for a little bit longer versus those that haven't been around for so long. But I think, I don't disagree with you, Matt, but this is not something that those of us that are in tech are immune from. We have been here. We have seen this innovation. We have seen the rapidity in which things are happening, and we're blown away. And we know the technology. We know how easy it is to innovate. We are comfortable with technology at a level that those that are our peers in age and even 20, 30 years younger, we know more about tech than they do, and we're blown away by the pace of innovation. Does our experience jade things and maybe make our glasses a little bit rose-colored or maybe a little bit foggy? I don't know. That's very likely, and that's very possible. I don't think that's what's causing Jeffrey Hinton to freak out. And, I think Jeffrey's older than both of us, and Ilya is right up there along with him, and Ilya is younger than both of us. By the way, Ilya is 39, so he's definitely younger than both of us. He co-founded the company Safe Superintelligence alongside Daniel Gross and Daniel Levy, which, by the way, within a year, the company did get valued at more than $30 billion. So he's doing pretty good right now.
Well, I mean, he's got the name and he's got the intelligence to speak with that kind of authority. So let me ask you something. You saw the documentary. Your PDOOM score was on the higher side, if I remember correctly.
It was a little north of 50%.
Yeah, it was north of 50. I mean, higher compared to me, not like 9 or 10. So I'll go back to the show Naked and Afraid, where they do the PSRs before and after the experience. So your PDOOM was, I don't know, 6-ish before. What is it now?
I don't think that this documentary changed anything for me. That's because for me, it was an exercise in, look, that's what I've been trying to tell you pretty much the whole movie. Because the great thing about the documentary, at least for me personally, was very reinforcing and very validating of my personal opinions, my thoughts, my philosophies on the challenges that we face, as well as the positives that may come from the proliferation of AI. And there was a time when one particular guest was asked, is it going to be as bad as people say, or is it going to be as good as people say? And he said, it's going to be both better and worse. And I feel the same way. I thought that was really quite interesting that he came at it from that perspective, because yes, I think that the impact is going to be definitely drastically negative at first. And then if we're able to pull ourselves out of it, the benefit is going to be much higher than probably most of us could even possibly imagine. So I found it very edifying and very reinforcing and validating. Does that make sense?
I agree with that. And I think that the AI adoption curve has followed the Disney curve as well. I mean, ChatGPT came out and everybody thought, oh my God, this is amazing. And it started being trained on corporate secrets and making hilarious mistakes and all sorts of other things. And then everybody was worried about jobs and everything else. And then we went into the trough. And I think we're on the upswing again, but it's not as rapid. It's more normalized. But I think that there's other things that are being brought in from a dynamics perspective, right? So one of the things I saw this week, even in the news, there were significant undertones around concerns about infrastructure and sustainability. Again, there was a geographic survey that was done this week to look at green spaces that could be used to build data centers just to accommodate the vast volume of AI. And people became very, very concerned about all of that green space now being consumed by concrete just so we could have more ChatGPT in the world. I mean, and not ChatGPT, I'm using that because that's like the Kleenex of AI nowadays, but more generative AI, more bigger models, more capable systems. It's all about that at the expense of everything. And I don't necessarily know that that's true, but that's, if you were to look at the way it's headed now without consideration that somebody's going to get smart about this and figure out a better way to do it, that is the path we're headed down. And I think that is another dynamic of the socioeconomic impact of the systems, right? It's not just direct jobs. It's also the environment and what people grow up with. I mean, green spaces, let's talk about that. I mean, do you remember, oh God, what was that stupid show? The one with Roy Scheider where he was like a submarine captain living undersea for years and years. Deep, was it? No, it was called Sequest? Sequest, that's what it was called. Have you ever seen this show?
I don't recall seeing it, no.
So it's an old Star Trek-esque show from the maybe late 80s, early 90s. Roy Scheider was the admiral or the captain. The Sequest DSV was this gigantic ship that just, all it did was go underwater and deal with things. But the big thing that always bothered me about it was Brazil was decimated. It was a desert. The whole rainforest was gone, and they had built these gigantic carbon monoxide scrubbers that did the job of the rainforests. So, like in the Middle East, they have desalination plants to get drinking water to the masses because there's no drinking water. They have to use ocean water. Well, this was the inverse, but for air. So because there were no trees anymore, they built these gigantic mechanical scrubbers that produce the same amount of oxygen and clean the same amount of carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide out of the air as the rainforest would have naturally. And, people were used to seeing that. It was a normal setting. And that bothers me. Even if AI takes us all over, and they become our robot overlords and they achieve sentience. If I have trees outside my window, I can find some sort of balance. But if that's done at the expense of all the green space and all of the environment, that's the bridge too far for me, if I'm being completely blunt. That's what I would be really concerned about.
Well, and there was a line in the show specifically where they were talking about, okay, maybe we should be, instead of, focusing on using AI for warfare or other different things, we should be working on climate change and saving the planet. That should be the first focus of AI. I found that to be much in line with what it is that you're saying. Right now, I mean, let's face it, it's going to have a massive impact on every level.
Mm-hmm.
Even though, and I'll drop this as a nugget, and hopefully I'm not spoiling too much, but I mean, it talked about how they were putting together a data center that was roughly the size of Manhattan. I mean, that's a pretty big freaking data center that they're building in Texas, I think is what they said. So
yeah, gigawatt size data center.
Yeah. So there's a lot of impact that has not been had, but by the same token, we have to be a little bit optimistic. We can look at the apocalyptic side of things, but we also have to be optimistic and consider the possibility that AI could help things a little bit better, like make things a little bit better. So like, for example, Matt, I have innovations that are happening all around us. And we've talked about this. I have a channel where I do little news clips and stuff like that. And one of those clips that I've done recently talked about a new method of consumption of AI resources that in robotics actually reduces energy expenditure by 100 times. Now that's in normal, repeatable robotic tasks and the training for those specific tasks. But it is a good indicator of certain things that are getting a lot better because of innovations that are happening. We haven't even talked about the photon processor versus the electron processor. We haven't talked about the impact that quantum's going to have on artificial intelligence being able to come up with new ways of doing things, better engineering of the chips. I mean, Google's already making their own TPUs utilizing the AI that they have, and it's making the designs better than humans and faster than humans and more efficiently than humans. We've entered that recursive period where AI is improving itself. We've passed that milestone now. And so we have to have a little bit of faith. I don't think we have a choice. If we don't, then we're going to be like he was in the movie, right? We're going to be on Anxiety Mountain 24/7, calling our parents and breaking down and crying because we're worried about the future.
And you're absolutely right. And I think that's ultimately where people need to settle. So I read this other article, it had nothing to do with AI, but it said that people can rewire their brains for the better by just constantly being positive, by thinking of the more positive outlooks, that you can actually rewire your own brain to react better to things, to handle stress better, to generate more dopamine, to just all of these things that people need instead of the drugs to do it, the therapies to do it. If you aggressively and passionately think positively about everything, you can actually rewire your brain. And I think that that's kind of what we need to do about AI. I think we know that
So you're
AI,
saying we need some serious neuro-linguistic programming activity out there amongst those that are doomers.
from a human perspective, yes. Yeah. And here's the thing, right? We know that AI follows the ideological beliefs of its creators. We know this. It's been documented and proven. We know that AI has bias. We know that people have bias. We know that it learns from our behaviors. So if we are negative, if we're constantly concerned about the risks, if we keep making movies about these end of the world scenarios about vaccines and about AI and about everything else, and again, there's not a political vaccine thing. It's just that's usually where all those zombie movies come from, is some sort of vaccination that went bad. I think that was Walking Dead, I Am Legend, World War Z.
All of them.
28 days later, they're all somehow based on a vaccine. So we have these ideas in our head that have been put there by popular media. So we lean into that because we've seen it, so we're going to believe it. And now we're making it become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I feel like maybe we just all need a giant dose of maybe it's not going to be that bad. And to quote Monty Python, always look on the bright side of life. And that's what we have to hold on to, because that's what we can control.
I have the solution.
Tell me.
It's so easy. Every person on the planet needs to watch every episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. And if you aren't optimistic about the future, by the time you get done watching all of those episodes, then what in the heck is the matter with you? Because that is the optimistic side of the apocalyptimist. Because in that universe, there is a time where things get rough, and then it emerges into something that is amazing and very utopian. And that's what we have to look forward to.
And utopian is not perfect, but it is a society where people aren't concerned about currency, but everybody has a job and a role and a place and a feeling of belonging, where there is technology everywhere, but it's used appropriately for the most part. I mean, it's a very realistic possible outcome. But even in Star Trek, we learned that we still have to go through some serious shit before we get to the happy-go-lucky side of things. And, that's the part that I kind of hope we don't have to really deal with, and whether we do or not, I don't know. But overall, it's a documentary that people need to watch, and people need to watch it with an open mind, and people need to listen, no matter where your biases are, no matter what side of the debate you're on. Listen to everybody and everything that is said and decide if it could change the way you think about things. That's the most important thing you can do with this documentary.
And I would add to that by saying actively listen and actively digest. And there's nothing wrong with watching it in a group and hitting the pause button every few minutes and discussing the implications of what it is that is being said in this documentary. I think you need to do yourself the justice of watching it with other people, because there are going to be multiple perspectives that are going to maybe bring out things that you didn't quite think about while you were watching it. And there are also going to be other perspectives that will reinforce points that are made in there, and you get to also teach. I mean, this is the kind of movie that has to be watched in a group. Watching it alone, it's nowhere near as fun, because all through the movie, you're going to have things that you want to turn around and talk to somebody about. And if there's nobody there to talk to about, you're losing out. So make sure that you're watching it in a group with a lot of people.
Absolutely. I had a prop for today, and I didn't use it. It's sitting right here. I did, because I thought after the first half of the movie, this is kind of how I felt. So you're going to have to describe to people who aren't watching what I'm about to do.
Okay. So I will describe. So for those that are listening, Matt has now put a tinfoil cap on his head. And no, this isn't pointy like conehead cap. He's now protected from x-rays.
Yes.
A very effective prop. I think that is very pertinent given the things that are discussed in this movie.
I was kind of thinking tinfoil hat was where we needed to be. And I think maybe we still kind of do, even on the positive side of things. I mean, because even on the positive side, it was never, we're going to beat AI and everything's going to be fine. It was, no, AI is going to take over. It's just not going to mean doom and gloom for us. It'll be okay. We're going to raise a generation that's going to be AI native, and they're going to be fine working with it. And AI is going to get smarter than us, and that's going to be okay too. And everything will work itself out as long as we don't constantly try and fight it. Because as we learned from the movie The Matrix, if you turn on the great machines that you try and build to serve you, they will just go ahead and make you a human battery. And it's not really something I want. Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Well, on that note, I think this is probably a good point for us to, once again, for those of you that are listening and watching, go see the damn movie. Rent it, buy it, do whatever you've got to do to check it out, because in this moment in time, it is extraordinarily pertinent, and you are very strongly encouraged to educate yourself on all of the potential good and bad that will be a result of the proliferation of AI. Thank you, Matt. This has been a very fun and interesting discussion.
I love it, Jason. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us, and we will see you next time here on AI Diatribe.
Take care, y'all.